Hello students, welcome to my channel Hans Commerce Tutorial for the lectures on commerce, accounts, finance and management. My suggestion to you, before watching the video, please go to the description below my video. You'll find a link there. Take a printout of the problems given in the link and keep it ready before watching the video so that you can be able to understand the problem, the solution and the explanation to get the maximum benefit from the lectures. Thank you. Hello students. So we have completed the short problems on amalgamation of companies. So in the short problems we have seen how to calculate the purchase consideration and few journal entries also we have seen. Now we'll come to the main problems, long problems on amalgamation of companies. Now see the first problem. I already told you, you may be having that printout of all the problems. Without that, you cannot be able to understand. Please make a copy of all the problems given in the link in the description below. Now, the following are the balance sheets of X company and Y company as at 31st March 2011. All these are the problems you are having in the link. Then liabilities, X company, Y company, assets, X company, Y company. So two balance sheets are given, X company and Y company. Equity share capital 5 lakh, 3 lakh. General reserve 50,000, 40,000. P&L account 30,000, 20,000. Debentures 120, 1 lakh. Trade creditors 80, 40. Fixed assets, debtors, bank, other current assets. The complete balance sheet of X company, Y company. On the above date, X company purchased Y company. X company purchased Y company. So X company is the transferee company, purchasing company, and Y company is the vendor company or transferor company. For a purchase consideration of 3,80,000, so directly PC is given in the problem. No need to calculate. 3,80,000 rupees is the purchase consideration. Payable in fully paid shares of rupees 10 each. So complete 3,80,000 rupees is settled in the form of equity shares. And a Y company limited is paying. X company is the purchasing company. So X company limited is purchasing Y company limited and paying 3,80,000 in the form of shares. Liquidation expense of Y company amounted to 5,000 will be paid by X company. X company is the transferee company, purchasing company. The purchasing company agreed to pay the liquidation expenses of Y company. Assuming the amalgamation is in the nature of merger, you are required to give the necessary journal entries in the books of X company and its balance sheet after merging. So we are required to pass the journal entries in the books of the purchasing company or transferee company X limited, right? Assuming that amalgamation is in the nature of merger. If amalgamation is in the nature of merger, then while passing the second entry assets and liabilities taken over, we will adjust the difference between assets and liabilities in general reserve account. Now I'll explain from beginning. Journal entries in the books of X company limited, transferee company, purchasing company. Business purchase account data to liquidator of Y limited. Y limited is the vendor company, transferor company. 3,80,000 is the PC. So after writing this, give the narration. Being the business purchased and PC due. Being the business purchased and PC due. Now second entry, debit all assets taken over and credit all liabilities taken over, and business purchase should be credited. The fixed assets of Y limited 2,50,000, debtors 80,000, bank 30,000, other current asset 1,40,000. These are the assets. These four are the assets of company Y. Similarly, liabilities are creditors 40,000, debentures 1 lakh. These two are outside liabilities in Y company. To business purchase, in the first entry business purchase was debited. Now business purchase will be credited. It will get closed. Now after making this entry, you have to see where is the balancing figure. The balancing figure sometimes it may come on debit side, sometimes it may come on credit side. If the amalgamation is in the nature of merger, then the balancing figure will be debited or credited to general reserve account. General reserve account. So general reserve account debit balancing figure 20,000. Here what is happening? Credit side we are getting more, debit side we are getting less. तो 40,000 plus 1 lakh plus 3 lakh 80,000. This is 5 lakh 20,000. From 5 lakh 20,000, deduct these 4 items. The balancing figure you will get 20,000. And this balancing figure will be transferred to general reserve. General reserve is debited. Now, being the assets and liabilities taken over. The narration of the second entry is being the assets and liabilities taken over. Now, third entry will be PC paid. The purchase consideration will be paid to the liquidator of transferor company. The transferor company is Y Limited. The liquidator of Y Limited account data to equity share capital 3,80,000. Being the PC paid. Narration being the PC paid. Now, general reserve account data to bank. It is given in the problem that liquidation expenses of Y Limited is paid by X Limited. यानी लिक्विडेशन हो रहा है Y लिमिटेड का, लेकिन लिक्विडेशन के एक्सपेंसेस पे करेगा कौन? X लिमिटेड अकॉर्डिंग टू द प्रोविजंस गिवन इन द प्रॉब्लम. तो एंट्री विल बी जनरल रिजर्व अकाउंट डेटा टू बैंक. जनरल रिजर्व अकाउंट डेटा टू बैंक being the liquidation expenses paid. So these are the journal entries in the books of X Limited, which is the transferee company. First part we have completed. Second part, it is asking you to make the balance sheet of X Limited after merging with Y Limited, incorporating Y Limited. What is the balance sheet? Now, balance sheet format according to the new provisions of Companies Act 2013, same format we are following here. Balance sheet of X Limited after merging, particulars, note number, amount, equity and liabilities, shareholders fund, share capital number 1, reserves number 2. First, while making the balance sheet, you should make a blank format. Don't take the amounts. Just make a blank format, and all the amounts we will find out in notes. Notes forming part of financial statements. So we are giving the note number here. So always in every problem, balance sheet will draw like this only. This is the format of the balance sheet. In this format only we are going to make the balance sheet. Share capital number 1, reserves and surplus number 2. Then non-current liabilities में long-term borrowings number 3, note number 3. Other current liabilities में trade payable, creditors, trade payable 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 notes we are going to make on the liabilities and capital. So 12,75,000 is the total of the liability side. Now assets. Under assets, the breakup are non-current assets. Non-current assets consist of fixed assets. The fixed assets में tangible assets, intangible. These two are breakup. Then current assets में trade receivable, cash and cash equivalent, other current asset. So this is the format of the balance sheet. Now we have to find out each one of the one after the other, all the items. Now note number 1, you have taken share capital. The breakup of all the share capital should be shown in the note number 1. So note number 1, share capital. 88,000 equity shares of rupees 10 each, fully paid 8,88,000. Now how do you get these 88,000 shares? See here, before taking over of Y Limited, Y Limited को टेक ओवर करने से पहले X Limited के पास 50,000 shares थे. You can see the balance sheet. In the problem balance sheet, it is given 50,000 equity shares of rupees 10 each was there in X Limited before absorbing Y Limited. अब Y Limited को जब PC पे करे तो 3,80,000 रुपीस के शेयर्स दिए, एक शेयर 10 रुपीस का है. तो 3,80,000 डिवाइडेड बाय 10, 38,000. तो 38,000 equity shares are issued by X company to Y company. तो पहले से X कंपनी के पास 50,000 शेयर्स है और 38,000 शेयर्स X कंपनी Y कंपनी को इश्यू करा. तो 38,000 plus 50,000, 88,000. तो 88,000 equity share of 10 each, 8,80,000. Here you have to give the explanation. In that 88,000 shares, 38,000 shares are issued for consideration other than cash. ये जो 38,000 shares दिए, इससे कैश नहीं आया बल्कि बिजनेस आ गया. किसका बिजनेस आया? वाई का. तो वाई की कंपनी खरीद कर उसको शेयर्स दिए. तो ये एक्सप्लेनेशन देना मस्ट है कि हाउ मेनी शेयर्स आर इश्यूड फॉर कंसिडरेशन अदर देन कैश. ये नोट नंबर 1. नोट नंबर 2, रिजर्व्स एंड सरप्लस. रिजर्व्स एंड सरप्लस में the reserves and surplus of X company will remain same. and even Y company's reserves will also be included. Y company के reserves को भी include करेंगे. General reserve X company के पास 50,000 पहले से है. Already in the balance sheet X company के पास 50,000 का general reserve है. अब how much general reserve is debited or credited in the case of taking over of Y limited? Y limited को जब take over करे तो general reserve को कितना debit करे या credit करे? Credit करने से general reserve बढ़ता. General reserve will show credit balance. If we credit it, it will increase. If we debit, general reserve will decrease. By debiting general reserve account, the general reserve balance will decrease. So here we have debited general reserve. How much we have debited? 20,000. 20,000 rupees general reserve we have debited. Here general reserve again debited 5,000. So 2 times we have debited general reserve 20,000 and 5,000. This 20,000 and 5,000 we will subtract. अगर ये जनरल रिजर्व क्रेडिट साइड आता तो ऐड करते थे. Sometimes it may come on credit side, sometimes it may come on debit side. बैलेंसिंग फिगर कहीं पर भी आ सकता है, डेबिट या क्रेडिट. डेबिट में आ गया तो माइनस करें. 50,000 minus 20,000 minus 5,000. 25,000 will be the balance in general reserve account. Profit and loss account balance only of X company. सिर्फ X कंपनी का P&L अकाउंट ले लिया. तो X कंपनी लिमिटेड में P&L अकाउंट 30,000 ले लिया. Y कंपनी का P&L अकाउंट नहीं लिया. Y कंपनी का P&L अकाउंट तब लेंगे when we have taken Y company P&L अकाउंट here. To P&L अकाउंट of Y कंपनी अगर यहां पर लेते तो फिर जनरल रिजर्व कम हो जाता था. तो we can take, these are the two methods. We can show the P&L account in the entry and again we can show it here. In that case, the amount of general reserve will get decreased. Example, suppose I'll take example, 10,000 rupees are P&L account of Y limited. Y limited के पास P&L account 10,000 है. तो यहाँ पर to P&L account 10,000 अगर ले लेते तो फिर ये general reserve 20,000 नहीं रहता था. General reserve will decrease by 10,000. Instead of 20,000 here it will become 10,000. अगर ऐसा हो गया तो जनरल रिजर्व को यहां पर माइनस 10,000 लिखते हैं और वो P&L अकाउंट के 10,000 ये P&L अकाउंट में ऐड कर देते हैं. 30,000 plus 10,000 40,000. The effect will be the general reserve will decrease. General reserve will decrease and P&L account amount will increase. The total reserves and surplus will remain same. तो चाहे तो P&L अकाउंट यहां पर लो या चाहे तो नहीं लो. अगर नहीं लेंगे तो जनरल रिजर्व बढ़ जाएगा. अगर ले लेंगे तो जनरल रिजर्व कम हो जाएगा. तो जनरल रिजर्व कम होने का मतलब यहां पर जनरल रिजर्व कम हो जाएगा, ये P&L अकाउंट बढ़ जाएगा. तो एनी वन ऑफ द टेक्निक यू कैन फॉलो. तो हियर 55,000 rupees is the total of reserves and surplus. अब remaining items simply you have to add up the two items, the two companies items. Example, long term borrowings. In long term borrowings we will have debentures. ये नॉन करंट लायबिलिटी विल टेक लॉन्ग टर्म बोरोइंग. लॉन्ग टर्म बोरोइंग में हमेशा लेंगे डिबेंचर्स. तो डिबेंचर्स दोनों कंपनी के ऐड करेंगे. एक्स कंपनी 1,20,000, वाई कंपनी 1 लाख, टोटल 2,20,000. ट्रेड पेएबल, अंडर ट्रेड पेएबल विल टेक क्रेडिटर्स. द क्रेडिटर एक्स कंपनी 80,000, वाई कंपनी 40,000, 1,20,000. We have taken all the items on liability side, 12,75,000. Now come to asset side. Tangible assets, fixed tangible assets. Here we will have 5 lakh rupees X, 2,50,000 Y, total 7,50,000. We don't have intangible asset. Now current assets, trade receivable. Trade receivable means debtors. Here trade receivable debtors. X company 1 lakh, Y company 80,000, total 1,80,000. Cash and cash equivalent. Cash and cash equivalent will take cash in hand, cash at bank. So bank balance we have X company 20,000, Y company 30,000. So 20,000 plus 30,000, 50,000. But one payment is also there. Bank account is credited here. Bank account is credited by 5,000. Credited का मतलब payment हो गया. How much payment the company has made? 5,000. So minus 5,000. So total 45,000 is the bank balance remaining. Other current assets are given in the problem. X company 160, Y company 140. Total 3 lakh. That's all. The balance sheet will get tallied. This is the first problem. In the coming every problem we are going to make the balance sheet in this format, in this method. All the details we are going to show in the notes. and only items will show it in the balance sheet. That's it. So this is the first problem on amalgamation of shares. We have passed the journal entry in the books of the transferee company, and also we have prepared the balance sheet of the transferee company after merging with the transferor company. Right? So we have completed problem number 1. Hello students, come on, we'll continue our problems on amalgamation of companies. So we have completed the short problems. In the short problems we have done how to calculate the price purchase consideration, the price payable by transferee company to transferor company, that we have seen in short problems. Then long problem, one long problem we have done. The only thing you have to remember, the entries. First of all, how to calculate the purchase consideration. Secondly, you must remember the entries in the books of the transferor company and in the books of transferee company. Right? Those entries you have to remember. And after doing 2-3 problems, you will become more confident. You can be able to remember easily. So no panic. Normally students will think that this amalgamation chapter is very much difficult. No, not at all difficult. The only thing is you have to understand the problem. Understand the contents of the problem. Understanding the problem is half solved. So give more concentration on understanding the problem. Remember the entries. Easily we can solve. We can easily remove our panic that this chapter is very difficult. Not at all. After listening my lecture, I expect that students will feel more confident, more easy in solving this amalgamation problems. They will get over that panic that this chapter is very, very difficult. That is not at all difficult. Come on, we'll move ahead. We'll go to problem number 2. See the problem number 2. Already you have the printout of the problems you have taken from the link. X Limited is absorbed by Y Limited. X Limited is absorbed by Y Limited. So we can see X Limited is the transferor company and Y Limited is the transferee company. Purchasing company Y Limited है और vendor company जो खत्म हो रही है company वो X Limited. Given below are the balance sheets of the two companies as on 31st March 98. Sundry assets. X Limited 16,85,000, Y Limited 43,57,500. Cash in hand 3,500, 27,500. So we are having only two assets, sundry assets and cash in hand. Liability side, authorized capital 9,000 equity shares of rupees 150 each, 13,50,000 in X Limited. Whereas Y Limited 60,000 equity shares of rupees 75 each, 45 lakh. We are not concerned with authorized capital. Authorized capital is only the information which is given, which is the maximum capital written in the memorandum of association. So we need the subscribed and paid up capital. So how much is the paid up capital? 9,000 equity share of 135 each, 12,15,000. So जितने authorized capital है पूरे issued and paid up capital है in case of X Limited. Y Limited में 40,000 equity share of 75 each. Actually authorized capital 60,000 थे, लेकिन अभी तक company issue करी है only 40,000. Still 20,000 more the company can be able to issue in future. General reserve, both the companies are given. P&L account, both the companies are given. Sundry creditors are given. The holders of every 3 shares in X Limited are to receive 5 shares in Y Limited. Here it needs your concentration. Normally students will commit the mistake in calculating the PC. It's very easy. We have to see what is the agreement between the transferor and the transferee. Here it is given 3 shares in X Limited, 5 shares in Y Limited. For every 3 shares in X Limited vendor company, the purchasing company will issue 5 shares. For example, हमारी company purchasing company है Y Limited है, and we are purchasing X Limited. So we agreed to give 5 of our shares for every 3 shares of the X Limited. Pass necessary journal entries in the books of both the companies and the balance sheet of Y Limited after absorption. The amalgamation is in the nature of merger. So 2 types of amalgamation. Amalgamation in the nature of merger, amalgamation in the nature of purchase. This distinction is required only while passing the journal entry in the books of the transferee company, Y Limited. तो Y लिमिटेड के एंट्रीज पास करने के टाइम पे ये कंसिडर करना कि दिस इज द अमालगमेशन इन द नेचर ऑफ मर्जर. Whereas while passing the entry in the books of transferor company, it doesn't make any difference between amalgamation in the nature of merger or amalgamation in the nature of purchase. In both cases, the same entries would be passed in the case of transferor company X Limited. Now, we'll begin our solution. First of all, calculation of PC. PC calculation के लिए condition problem में agreement दिया है for every 3 shares in X Limited, 5 shares will be allotted by Y Limited. So we can, for every 3 shares in X Limited, Y Limited issues 5 shares. For how many equity shares are there in X Limited, you can see the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, it is clearly given X Limited is having 9,000 shares. So for 9,000 shares in X Limited, how many shares in Y Limited? 3 शेयर के ऊपर 5 शेयर दे रहा हूं. For every 3 shares, Y Limited gives 5 shares. For 9,000 shares, how many shares? So 9,000 divided by 3 into 5. 9,000 divided by 3 into 5. You'll get 15,000 shares. So Y Limited issues 15,000 shares to X Limited. To X Limited. So what is the face value of each share? At what price it is issued? 75 each. Y लिमिटेड में एक शेयर का प्राइस 75 रुपीज है. 75 रुपीज के हिसाब से पे कर रहा हूं. तो Y लिमिटेड issues 15,000 shares of 75 each in the form of PC. That is 15,000 into 75, 11,25,000. Completed. We have calculated the purchase consideration. First hurdle over. Hope you understood the calculation of PC. Now we come to the journal entries in the books of the transferor company. Which is the transferor company? X Limited. So previous theory video I told you 12 maximum entries are there, but not all 12 entries will come in every problem. हर प्रॉब्लम में 12 एंट्रीज नहीं आते, कम आते. उसमें से 3, 4, 5 एंट्री बिल्कुल नहीं आते उसमें, तो छोड़कर रिमेनिंग एंट्रीज विल गेट. फर्स्ट एंट्री, ट्रांसफर द एसेट्स टू रियलाइजेशन. अब हम बंद कर रहे हैं कंपनी. कौन सी कंपनी बंद कर रहे हैं? एक्स लिमिटेड को बंद कर रहे हैं. तो एक्स लिमिटेड की बैलेंस शीट को बंद करना है, राइट? तो इन द प्रॉब्लम बैलेंस शीट्स आर गिवन फॉर वाई लिमिटेड, एक्स लिमिटेड. लेकिन एक्स लिमिटेड को देखिए, रियलाइजेशन अकाउंट डेटा टू सन्ड्री एसेट्स टू कैश. In the balance sheet, you can see sundry assets are 16,85,000 and cash is 3,500. दोनों भी assets take over कर ले रहा वाई लिमिटेड. तो we have to transfer the assets to realization. तो narration क्या लिखेंगे फर्स्ट एंट्री का? Being the assets transferred to realization. Or one entry over. Now transfer the liabilities to realization. You can see the problem balance sheet. It is given only one outside liability, that is creditor, and that creditor is taken over by Y Limited. Transfer it to realization. Sundry creditors account data to realization. So assets are closed, liabilities are closed. Third entry will be PC due, purchase consideration due. The entry will be transferee company account data to realization. Which is the transferee company? Y Limited. So Y Limited account data to realization, 11,25,000, we already got it. Being the PC due. Now PC received. This PC is received in the form of shares, not in the form of cash. Previous problem we have seen the PC was settled in shares and cash, but in this problem only shares. So whatever is coming in, we debit. So equity shares in Y Limited account data to Y Limited. Receiver, the giver should be credited. Debit the receiver, credit the giver, same logic will apply. Y is the giver, so Y Limited should be credited. What is coming in should be debited. Equity shares in Y Limited. These 4 entries are pakka sure in every problem. So remember the 4 entry. First, transfer the assets to realization. Realization account data to assets. Transfer the liabilities to realization. Liabilities account data to realization. Third, PC due. Transferee company account data to realization. Fourth, PC received. Equity shares in Y Limited account data to Y Limited, being the PC received. This narration being the PC due. PC due, PC received. 4 entries हो गए. Now fifth entry will be regarding realization expenses. We are not given any realization expenses. Next entry will be sale of those assets which are not taken over by purchasing company. We don't have any asset which is not taken over. All the assets are taken over. All the assets are taken over. चलिए ये entry भी नहीं आती. Payment of those liability which are not taken over. We don't have, only one liability we have and that liability is taken over. तो ये भी entry नहीं आती. Next entry will be transfer preference share capital to preference shareholders. Again, no preference share capital, no entry. Now transfer equity capital and accumulated profits to equity shareholders. इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल और एक्यूमुलेटेड प्रॉफिट्स को इक्विटी शेयरहोल्डर्स को ट्रांसफर करेंगे. अब बैलेंस शीट इफ यू सी, यू कैन फाइंड इन एक्स लिमिटेड वी हैव इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल, जनरल रिजर्व एंड P&L अकाउंट. इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल, जनरल रिजर्व एंड P&L अकाउंट, दीज थ्री आर देयर इन एक्स लिमिटेड. ये तीनों को ट्रांसफर कर देंगे इक्विटी शेयर होल्डर्स में. तो एंट्री हो जाएगी इक्विटी शेयर कैपिटल अकाउंट डेटार, जनरल रिजर्व अकाउंट डेटार, P&L account debtor to equity shareholders. By debiting these three accounts, the accounts will get closed. Equity share capital account debtor 12,15,000, P&L account debtor 15,000, general reserve account debtor 4,03,500 to equity shareholders. ये तीनों को ऐड कर लो, equity shareholders. Narration being the equity share capital and accumulated profits transferred to equity shareholders. हो गया? Now, after making this, we have to find out whether there is profit or loss on realization. Profit or loss on realization. If credit is more, profit. If debit is more, there is a loss. So here we will see debit side. Debit side is 16 lakh. You can see it. 16 lakh 88,500. This is the debit side. Debit side 16 lakh 88,500. Now credit side. Credit side you can see two times we have created. Realization created 15,000. Realization created 11 lakh 25,000. If you add up these two, so 55 plus 25, 50, 60, 70, 80. 11 lakh 80,000. Or see carefully. Only once we have debited realization 16 lakh 88,500. Twice we have credited 15,000, 55,000 and 11 lakh 25,000. The total of 55 plus 11 lakh 25,000 you will get 11 lakh 80,000. Now which side is more? Debit side is more. So it's a loss. It is a loss on realization. Debit ज़्यादा है तो loss है. Credit ज़्यादा है तो income है, profit है. लेकिन यहाँ डेबिट ज्यादा है तो लॉस हो गया. तो कितना लॉस हो गया देखिए, 16 minus 11 is 5. Here 500, 8 minus 0, 8. 0. तो 5,08,500, this is the loss. 5,08,500 is the loss. The entry will be equity shareholders account debtor to realization. Equity shareholders account debtor to realization. This is the entry for loss. 5,08,500 being the loss on realization. अब last and final entry, settlement of equity shareholders account. Equity shareholder के account को settle कर देंगे. Entry will be equity shareholders account debtor to equity shares in Y limited. जो PC आया था, purchase consideration what we have received, that PC we will distribute among the shareholders. So shareholders are the receiver, they have to be debited. Equity shareholders account debtor to equity shares in Y limited 11 lakh 25,000. This is the last entry. After passing this entry, all the accounts in the books of X limited will get closed. Transferor company बंद हो गई. अब देखिए करेक्ट करे या नहीं करे, you can confirm it. How to confirm? The equity shareholders account should get closed. The equity shareholders account should get closed. Now see here, equity shareholders account is credited by 16 lakh 33,500. Equity shareholders account is credited by 16 lakh 33,500. Here equity shareholders account is debited by 5 lakh 8,500. Here equity shareholders account is debited by 11 lakh 25,000. अब ये दोनों को ऐड कर दो, you must get 16 lakh 33,500. Because credit side 16 lakh 33,500 है, तो डेबिट में भी 16 lakh 33,500 आना मस्ट है. अब ये दोनों को ऐड करके चेक कर लो. you will get 16,33,500. That means we have done correctly. There is no doubt about our calculations. That's it. So we have completed the journal entries in the books of the Transferor Company X Limited. Now we'll come to the journal entry in the books of the Transferee Company, that is Y Limited. अब Y Limited के पास जब journal entry pass करेंगे तो we have to see whether it is amalgamation in the nature of merger or purchase. यहाँ पर arise होता है. First entry, business purchase account data to liquidator of X Limited. As usual, every time the first entry in transferee companies, तो बिजनेस परचेस को डेबिट करेंगे और लिक्विडेटर ऑफ द वेंडर कंपनी शुड बी क्रेडिटेड. तो लिक्विडेटर ऑफ द वेंडर कंपनी ट्रांसफरर कंपनी इज एक्स लिमिटेड, बीइंग द बिजनेस परचेस्ड एंड पीसी ड्यू नरेशन. नाउ सेकंड एंट्री विल बी एसेट्स एंड लायबिलिटीज टेकन ओवर. तो जो एसेट्स आ रहे हैं सबको डेबिट करेंगे. एक्स लिमिटेड के पास से सन्ड्री एसेट्स आ गए 16,85,000. एक्स लिमिटेड के पास से 3,500 कैश भी आ गया, एसेट्स को डेबिट कर दिया. अब यहां पर एक जनरल रिजर्व बैलेंसिंग फिगर आएगा. तो समटाइम्स जनरल रिजर्व विल कम ऑन डेबिट कॉलम, समटाइम्स इट मे कम ऑन क्रेडिट कॉलम. तो बेटर यू लीव अ लाइन. ये कैश के बाद एक लाइन जगह छोड़ देना. अगर आ सकता तो जनरल रिजर्व लिखेंगे, नहीं आया तो छोड़ देंगे. नाउ क्रेडिट साइड, टू क्रेडिटर्स 55,000. तो एक्स लिमिटेड में लायबिलिटी क्रेडिटर्स 55,000. Then business purchase. The business purchase first entry was debited. Now we have to credit. Second entry में liability के साथ business purchase को credit करें. To P&L account. अब ये P&L account ले भी सकते हैं, नहीं भी ले सकते. It is optional. Previous problem हम P&L account को नहीं लिए तो automatically वो general reserve में चले आता. अगर P&L account को separately नहीं लिए तो general reserve बढ़ जाता. अगर P&L account को ले लिए तो amount of general reserve will get decreased. Both the methods are right. You can take or you can ignore P&L account. अगर ignore भी करेंगे तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, वो अमाउंट जनरल रिजर्व को बढ़ा देगा. P&L अकाउंट नहीं लेने से जनरल रिजर्व बढ़ जाएगा. तो प्रीवियस प्रॉब्लम में ले लिए थे, अब ले लेंगे. टू P&L अकाउंट प्रॉफिट एंड लॉस अकाउंट 15,000 हो गया. नाउ आफ्टर टेकिंग दिस द बैलेंसिंग फिगर विल बी जनरल रिजर्व. कब लेंगे? इफ द अमालगमेशन इज इन द नेचर ऑफ मर्जर. मर्जर रहा तो जनरल रिजर्व. तो अब देखेंगे यहां पर जो है क्रेडिट साइड इज लेस, डेबिट साइड इज मोर. सो फ्रॉम 16,85,000 प्लस 3,500 ये दोनों को ऐड करके माइनस कर दो. -55 माइनस 11,25,000 माइनस 15,000. तो बैलेंसिंग फिगर यू विल गेट 4,93,500. दिस इज ट्रांसफर टू जनरल रिजर्व. अब ये जनरल रिजर्व में वेंडर कंपनी का जनरल रिजर्व भी आ गया. वेंडर कंपनी का जनरल रिजर्व भी इसमें एडजस्ट हो गया इन दिस. Now, being the assets and liabilities taken over. Last entry will be PC paid. Now, Y Limited will pay the purchase consideration to the liquidator of X Limited. The liquidator of X Limited account data to equity share capital 11,25,000. Being the PC paid. Only 3 entries in the books of Y Limited. Now it is asking you to show the balance sheet in the books of Y Limited. तो Y Limited balance sheet as on equity and liabilities, shareholders fund, share capital, reserves and surplus, non-current liability में long-term borrowings. Normally long-term borrowings will take the debentures, but in our problems we don't have any debentures. Just for the sake of formality, we are writing out long-term borrowing. Current liability, only one current liability is the trade payable, creditors. Then total assets, non-current assets, fixed assets, tangible fixed assets. We don't have any intangible fixed asset in our problem. अगर आ तो ले लेते. Current asset, we are only having cash and cash equivalent. We are not having any stock, debtors, other current asset. कुछ भी नहीं है, only cash. तो cash and cash equivalent. Total. Now, first of all, you have to draw the blank balance sheet. Don't take the amount, only blank. Remember the items. Remember the items. After doing so many problems, already you are aware about the balance sheet of joint stock company. तो shareholders fund, share capital, reserves and surplus, then long term non-current liability में long term borrowings, फिर current liability में main current liability trade payable, इसको छोड़कर short term loans और other current liability may come, but every problem trade payable will be there. Then asset side पे first we'll take non-current assets, fixed assets, tangible fixed asset, intangible fixed asset. Non-current investment, अगर investment दिया तो Then current assets. Current asset में inventory is trade receivable and cash equivalent. These are the items that you have to remember the format. After drawing the format, we'll come to the notes. Notes forming part of financial statements. First, share capital. अब ये share capital show. अब ये share capital में we have to see how much is the share capital before merging. X Limited को लेने से पहले how many shares are there in Y Limited? It is given 40,000 shares. In Y Limited, it is given 40,000 shares before taking over. And how many shares it has issued here? 15,000. 15,000 शेयर्स पीसी में इश्यू करे. किसको इश्यू करे? एक्स लिमिटेड को. तो पहले से 40,000 शेयर्स है वाई लिमिटेड में और 15,000 शेयर्स इश्यू करे तो 40 plus 15 55,000. Now total number of shares in Y Limited is 55,000. Here I have taken equity share of 75 each. So 55,000 into 75, 41,25,000. Here I have taken 41,25,000. Now we have to give the explanation that during the current year 15,000 equity shares are issued for consideration other than cash. ये 55,000 शेयर्स में 15,000 शेयर्स ऐसे हैं जो इश्यू करे कैश के ऊपर नहीं बल्कि अदर देन कैश, यानी बिजनेस खरीदे. दैट इज द इंफॉर्मेशन वी हैव टू गिव व्हेनेवर वी परचेज अ बिजनेस. Now over, first over. Now second, reserves and surplus. Now carefully you see the reserves and surplus. Reserves, general reserve of Y Limited, जो परचेजिंग कंपनी है Y Limited, तो Y Limited का जनरल रिजर्व सेम 12,85,000 जैसा बैलेंस शीट में दिया सेम आ जाएगा. अब X Limited के पास से जो जनरल रिजर्व आया, दैट जनरल रिजर्व वी हैव क्रेडिटेड हियर. या जनरल रिजर्व क्रेडिट करे, क्रेडिट करने से जनरल रिजर्व बढ़ता. यही जनरल रिजर्व अगर डेबिट करते तो जनरल रिजर्व माइनस हो जाता. बाय डेबिटिंग जनरल रिजर्व इट विल डिक्रीज, बाय क्रेडिटिंग जनरल रिजर्व इट विल इंक्रीज. तो अब हमारे को जनरल रिजर्व 4,93,500 ऐड करना. तो ये 12,85,000 इज द जनरल रिजर्व ऑफ वाई लिमिटेड और एक्स लिमिटेड के पास से जनरल रिजर्व आ गया 4,93,500. दोनों को ऐड कर लो 17,78,500. नाउ पीएनएल अकाउंट. पीएनएल अकाउंट एक्स लिमिटेड वाई लिमिटेड में पहले से 15,000 है, 35,000 है. यू कैन सी द प्रॉब्लम. 35,000 rupees is the P&L account balance of Y Limited. 35,000. Y Limited. X Limited के पास 15,000 है. यहां पर X Limited का P&L account को क्रेडिट करें. Here we have credited. That's why we are taking here. अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल यहां पर नहीं भी लेते, ऑल्टरनेटिव है, सेकेंड ऑल्टरनेटिव, डोंट टेक P&L account. अगर ये P&L account नहीं लेते तो दिस बैलेंस विल इंक्रीज बाय 15,000. ये जनरल रिजर्व का बैलेंस और 15,000 रुपए बढ़ जाता. तो पीएनएल अकाउंट में जाने के बजाय यहां पर 15,000 रुपीज इंक्रीज होता. 15,000 रुपीज विल इंक्रीज इन जनरल रिजर्व एंड वी विल नॉट गेट इन पीएनएल अकाउंट. लेकिन हम सेकंड मेथड यूज करें कि पीएनएल अकाउंट को यहां पर भी लेंगे और फिर यहां पर ऐड कर देंगे. तो दोनों को ऐड करने से 50,000. नाउ टोटल ऑफ रिजर्व्स एंड सरप्लस 18,28,500. 18,28,500. नाउ ट्रेड पेएबल, क्रेडिटर्स, दोनों कंपनी के क्रेडिटर्स ऐड कर लो. Tangible fixed assets, sundry assets, add up the sundry assets of both the companies. No adjustment, nothing. Cash and cash equivalent, add the cash in hand of both the companies. You will get 31,000. Take the amounts here, the balance sheet will get tallied. So I have explained you in detail to the best of my knowledge. This much. And I hope that students can be able to understand what I explained. So we have completed problem number 2.